Hey, what's up, guys? This is Nick from Team Damage Step here with my brother Drew.
Hello.
As you can see, we have a whole bunch of Magic content up because my brother plays primarily Magic, and his friend Eric that was over is a very, very mastermind of Magic and very trolly indeed, as if you saw. So this is going to be an EDH deck profile, so it might be a little bit long. So I'll
only focus on really explaining some of the more key cards of the deck. So let's start with the obvious thing to start with, the commander. I can already feel your boos penetrating Nick's laptop. My commander is Animar, Soul of Elements, a legendary creature elemental, 1/1, protection from white and black, costs a blue, red, and a green. Whenever a creature spell is cast, whenever I cast a creature spell, I get a +1/+1 counter on him. For every +1/+1 counter, my creatures cost 1 generic less. So you obviously may know how this deck is going to go. Big creatures and lots of mana fixing. So, all right,
you can just set it. You can just set it to side. So here's if we're gonna try to go by this a little bit fast. If you guys, I will be posting the deck list in the description, so if you miss anything, it'll be there.
Alright, let's start with red. Or do it color by color. Now, there's a few. I will mention that there are a few things missing from this deck that I still want to get. And yes, before you ask, this is based on the pre-con commander deck. I've pretty much swapped out most of the stuff that came with it for my own things. Let's start here with red. We have the Red Praetor, Urabrask the Hidden, for very obvious reasons. He slows my opponent down and speeds my stuff up. Here we have Glitterfang. Now, why Glitterfang? He is a 1/1 for 1 red with haste. At the beginning of at the end of the turn, return Glitterfang to my hand. What this is for is I can cast him once a turn and get extra counters on Animar. So I basically pay 1 red to put a counter on Animar. It's actually pretty nifty. Here we have, since there's a lot of creatures in this, we have Soul's Fire to use a creature's power as a damage basis for a burn spell, which is pretty handy considering there are Eldrazi in this deck. Archwing Dragon for the same. He's in here for the same reasons as Glitterfang. He also bounces back to my hand or at the end of turn, but he's also a 4/4 flying haste. So he's actually a little bit more useful than Glitterfang in combat. Also, it is my goal with this deck to try and kill somebody with Glitterfang. Galvanoth to just speed out some instants and sorceries to get some support spells going. Here we have Electropotence, since there is big creatures in this deck. I can pay a red and 2 generic while this is on the field to have the creature deal its damage and power. Its power and damage to a target creature or player. Still recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Vow of Lightning. This is actually, I think, the only Vow I left in the deck just because I like it. Here we have Disaster Radius, obvious reasons. Seething Song for pumping out some red mana. A personal favorite dragon of mine, Bogardan Hellkite. When he comes into play, you can divide 5 damage amongst any number of targets, which is pretty awesome. Magamtic Force, because he's a big, mean motherfucker that gives you a lightning bolt every turn for free. Balefire Dragon. Actually, no, I did not put Moonveil Dragon. It's only 2 of the Innistrad Dragons made it into this deck. He's pretty fun, because if you can get him over your opponent's creatures and into their face, he deals how much damage he dealt to your opponent to all of his creatures, and usually ends up nuking most of them. Pyretic Ritual for free mana. Spitebellows for evoking him and getting some damage out and putting a counter on Animar. Alright, now that's all for red. Let's move on to another color. We have blue. There's nothing amazingly special about the blue I threw into this deck. Here we have a cancel Deep Sea Kraken, because, well, Deep Sea Kraken. Here we have the blue Praetor, Jin-Gitaxias, the Core Augur. Also for the purposes of speeding myself up and slowing down my opponent. Spell Crumple, I just liked it and needed another 3-cost counter spell. Lantern Spirit for the same reasons as Glitterfang and Archwing Dragon. He can be bounced back to my hand and replayed for counters on Animar. Psychic Barrier, just to have a nice little counter spell. Here we have Deprive, a 2-cost counter spell, because I can't find an extra counter spell for this deck. Here, to go with some of the counter spells that are in this deck, I threw in Guile. Whenever I counter a spell, I get to remove that spell from the game and cast it without paying its mana cost. And Leyline of Anticipation to speed things up a little, because this deck moves pretty slow. And that's all for blue. Let's move on to multicolor. Here we have Fire Spout to gain some board control. Simic Sky Swallower, he's a favorite creature of mine from Simic. I love Ravnica. Shielding Plaques, it gives a creature hexproof, and you get to draw a card when it comes into play. Vengeful Rebirth. This card is expensive, but it's very useful, because I tend to... A lot of high mana cost cards end up in my graveyard, so being able to jump them back to my hand is pretty useful, and it deals their converted mana cost in damage to a target, so that's always fun. Hull Breach came with the deck, and I liked it, so I kept it. Prophetic Bolt for the same reasons. In Tet the Dreamer, he's actually a favorite creature of mine as well. His ability is pretty nifty. He gets to remove a card from the top of my deck, and I get to cast it for free. Runes of the Dais to buff a creature when needed. Gives them +1/+1 and double strike if they're red, and +1/+1 and trample if they were green. Cloud of the Dominus, this similar enchantment for 1 mana that gives them +1/+1 and Shroud if they are blue, and +1/+1 and Haste if they are red. Riku, I was actually, when I bought the commander deck, I was originally intending on using Riku as my commander, but I ended up liking Animar a lot more. Vexing Shusher to make sure my creatures hit the field. And Giant Solifuge, another favorite of mine from Ravnica. Let us move on to green. Here we have a Garruk Wildspeaker. It also came with the deck. I was actually pretty satisfied with its existence in there. I actually have a few Garuks before I bought this deck. If there wasn't a Garruk in it, I probably would have put one in. Crows and Drover, just to further decrease mana costs of high-cost creatures. Strangleroot Geist is a nice little small weenie beater that gives me a counter for Animar and is low cost. Fierce Empath lets me tutor out a high mana cost creature. Nature's Will, whenever one or more creatures I control deal combat damage to a player, I can tap all lands that player controls. Deadwoon Treefolk, another card that came with the deck I really liked, so I kept it. Cultivate. Elvish Aberration is a kind of fat creature that gives me some mana. Bramble Crush, for if you know what Bramble Crush is for very obvious reasons. It destroys a target non-creature permanent, which is pretty awesome. You can for Planeswalker hate, or if your opponent has a non-basic land that looked at you wrong. Let's move on to some of the stars of the show. I did throw quite a few Eldrazi in here. Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, because Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. He comes into play, destroys a permanent, has Annihilator 4, and is indestructible.
You can cast it for free.
And yes, he can actually potentially be cast for free in this deck. I actually have cast him for free before. A Pathrazer of Ulamog, just because he's a nice little beater. Artisan of Kozilek. Why not? It That Betrays. I actually have a friend who scoops every time this hits the field. We have Skittering Invasion to get some Eldrazi spawn tokens on the field and sack them for generic mana. Not of This World, because I saw this card and I actually got a chuckle out of it, because if they target a creature with a what is it, power higher than...
If you counter targets.
Yeah, the power 7 or greater, it is free, and it counters the spell targeting it. And another one, just for the... I find this enchantment hilarious. Eldrazi Conscription. It costs 8. Gives the enchanted creature +10/+10 trample and Annihilator 2. It is my goal in life to find as many hilarious creatures to put this enchantment on. I eventually want to make a deck that produces squirrel tokens, and I wish to Eldrazi Conscript them, so I can have giant death squirrels. And let's move on to artifacts. The artifacts are pretty simple. Signets from all 3 guilds that match the color pie. Here we have Lightning Greaves, Soul Ring, a Manalith, Steel Hellkite. He's a favorite artifact creature of mine. And here we have our non-basic land. Obviously, naturally Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. We have the Ravnica bounce lands of each color, for the color of each dual color combo for the color pie. Rupture Spire, because why not? Kazandu Refuge, another card that came with the deck that I just liked. All 3 Vivid lands of the color, as well as Temple of the False God and Command Tower, because what good multicolor EDH deck doesn't use Command Tower? And the rest is just basic land, as you can see. I don't feel like giving you a land count because that would just make the video a little bit too long. So, and that's it. That is my tricolor Animar EDH.
8 mountains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Count them.
11 forests, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 island. Thank you for watching, guys. This was Nick from Team Damage Step with Drew.